Okay, so I guess the big question is, what was more fun to work on, Facts of Life or Deadwood?
Deadwood was probably more fun.
Why was that?
Well, my role was that I guess I worked in a whorehouse, and
And you didn't work at a whorehouse on Facts.
I didn't just work in a whorehouse on Fact Life.
From the heart of Hollywood, it's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show with Patrick Labyorteaux.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Tonight's episode, Geri Jewell.
Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Okay, you know her as Geri from Facts of Life or Jewell from Deadwood. I know her as just another classmate our acting coach picked on. Please welcome Geri Jewell.
Oh my God.
Right, we were just talking right before. Yeah, that we took an acting class. I won't name the teacher just because I don't want. I think she's passed away. But we were in an acting class, and this lady, yeah, she just was upset and mean at everybody.
Well, you had to understand where she was coming from. She was trying to get the best work out of us. You know,
I agree with that. I run an acting class. There's other ways to do that than the way. I mean, it was also old school. We went to the class in what, the 80s,
oh yeah,
late 80s. Yeah.
of course, yes. Well, what was interesting was I went into her office because she gave me a script to do from Whose Life Is It Anyway? Do
Uh huh.
you remember that?
Wasn't that Richard Dreyfuss, where it was like he had?
Yeah,
Did he
it
have cerebral
was.
palsy, or what? Did he have something else?
No, he was paralyzed from the neck down.
Got it.
Okay. And I marched into her office and I said, "You're no different than anybody else in Hollywood. All you want me to do is play disabled roles." and, and I'm tired of it. I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, "Nobody comes into my office and talks to me that way. Do you understand that? And if you're not happy with that choice, then you can just drop out of the class and leave." And I was like so stunned. I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll do Whose Life Is It Anyway?" And it was so difficult for me to do because to be paralyzed from the neck down was the opposite of cerebral palsy.
Okay, this is perfect then. Tell can you explain to me, because I'm not a very bright person, what exactly is cerebral palsy, and how does it affect your body?
Cerebral palsy is brain injury, usually to the motor part of the brain that affects the central nervous system. A lot of times it's caused by the umbilical cord being wrapped around the neck and the brain not getting enough oxygen. So
Okay.
it it is considered a birth defect because you usually get it before birth, during birth, or after birth. How profound.
And what how was it for you? Do you know how
Well,
it happened?
I got it in a bizarre way. I didn't get it. I've done nothing traditional. I always do stuff different. But I got it because my mother was 6 months pregnant with me, and she was sitting on the porch in New York where we lived, and a student driver came around the corner going way too fast, lost control of the car, ran up my parents' front lawn, and knocked over the maple tree. And my mom ran to escape the tree, and in that run, she fell and she started hemorrhaging, and she was rushed to the hospital.
Oh my
And
God.
so it was definitely a traumatic birth, and they told my father that they lost the baby because they couldn't hear my heartbeat. They said, "We'll try to save your wife's life, but unfortunately, Mr. Jewell, we lost your baby." And my mom told me this story that she kept screaming, "She is alive!" Stop saying that. She just doesn't want to come out.
Right, she's not done cooking.
And it was probably true. I was like, "I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet." It's only 6 months.
Talk about an entrance. So
Yeah, I know.
so with cerebral palsy, I can see the physical manifestations of it. Is
Yeah.
it painful, or how does it affect you? How do you deal with it?
I never really had much pain until later in life. I mean, now I deal with pain because it's like if you were a professional athlete or a
Right.
professional dancer, you pay for it later in life from overuse. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so when we see, I don't know what to call it. I know that it looks like you're physically either trying to do something or fighting something. Is it a bit of both?
No, Patrick.
It's got to be exhausting.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize that in '99 I actually did break my neck. I
Oh my God.
I flipped over backwards and landed on my head, and they to put I was so close. I was lucky that I'm alive, but when I went to UCLA and was hurried in to see the surgeon, he told me that, he was the best equipped doctor to try to save my spinal cord, but you have to understand that even if you have the surgery, you may be paralyzed from the neck down. And I
My
said,
God.
well, that's okay. That's kind of trippy. And he said,
Why were you okay with that?
he said, "Trippy?" And I said, "Yeah, think about it. I have all this movement my whole life that I don't need." And then you take me to this other extreme. Yeah, that's kind of trippy. No movement at all. And he said, "Well, okay. Well, the other thing is you might not even live in surgery, and I have to legally tell you that." And I said, "Oh, I'm okay with that too."
Wow, you're
That's
pretty zen
no
about all of
problem
this.
either. But this is the kicker. He turns to my sister, Gloria, and he said, "My God, your sister has an incredible positive attitude about everything." And, and she kind of rolled her eyes. And she said, "Sometimes she does."
Sometimes, yeah.
And then he said, "Now I have to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut open your neck in the front."
Oh, oh.
And I said, "You're going to what?"
Yeah.
Well, that's how we do neck surgery. I have to open the front and do the surgery. And I said, and tears started coming to my eyes. And I said, "Well, if that's the case, then I don't want the surgery. I don't want to go under the knife." And he looked at me, he said, "Jerry, how do you think neck surgery is done? I mean, am I supposed to do surgery on your left foot?" And I said, well, you're supposed to be a very good doctor. And if you're a very good doctor, you'll find a way to do it from behind the head. Because I am a comedian and I don't want no dramatic scar in the front of my neck.
No kidding.
I mean, it was stupid. It was vanity. It was stupid. But he said, okay, I will look into that. And, and I'll never forget. He came into my hospital room about a day after I had surgery and he said, Geri, I'm going to do something and I want you to try really, really hard not to move. And which is hard with cerebral palsy. I mean,
Yeah, it's kind of the thing.
but then I thought it was still harming. No, I'm kidding. but, but I thought, okay, because I'm going to take your neck brace off and your body brace off. And I don't want you to move. I want to show you something. And he took everything off and he brought in a mirror. He said, look at this. And I started crying. I said, oh, that's my hip.
I couldn't hear what you said. What did you say? What happened?
I can't believe you cut the back of my head. He was to show me that there was no scar on the front of my neck. He said, you know, there's no pleasing you. So
Well,
now,
okay. Yeah.
because of that neck accident, that stupid thing that I did, yeah, I have to have 2 vials of Botox injected in my neck every 3 months because the brain wants to move my head all over the place, and I have a titanium neck. I have
Oh, wow.
screws in place, and my neck is going, no, I can't do that anymore. So,
Well, with all that Botox in your neck looks like it's 19 years old. Act 1, beginnings. Well, let's get to okay. So you're just a kid. Where do you come up with that you're going to be an actor? But you started off as a comedian, right? What was the starting point for you?
I started as a comic, as a stand-up, and I was in college. I was in my 3rd year of college, actually, and I was failing algebra for the 3rd time. And anatomy and physiology, I think I was barely passing. And I was so frustrated, and I was in the Disabled Services Department at Fullerton College, and a classmate of mine, Alex, who's blind, he said, Geri, you seem so depressed today. What is your problem?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't want to be here. I want to be in Hollywood. I want to be an actress. Well, why don't you do what I do? I said, what do you do? I go to the Comedy Store every Monday night and tell blind jokes. And I said, well, Alex, that may work for you, but you may not realize this, but I have perfect eyesight. He said, no, dinky face. He used to call me dinky face, even though he never saw my face, but he used to call me dinky face. He said, dinky face, you're going to tell cerebral palsy jokes. And he was the one that got me into this. And I never wanted to be a stand-up comic. I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be a comedic character actress.
Uh-huh.
Stand-up was not my goal.
But
it
you
was
did great. I mean, it was kind of like at that time, just if people don't remember, back in that period of time, stand-up comedy was so big.
oh
Everybody had a
God.
brick wall behind them. It was on cable all the time, and you were on
Yep.
all the shows. Your sets were always being played, and you had a huge career in stand-up. You did. I don't know if this is true. Did you do the Tonight Show? Did you do all the different?
I couldn't get the Tonight Show no matter what. I tried again and again and again, but could never get the Tonight Show for whatever
But you were
reason.
on practically everything else. I mean,
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
ended up being a great thing. I remember what was your big thing was like you wore a shirt that says because it's on your book,
Oh,
right?
I don't have cerebral palsy. I'm drunk, and there's a funny story to that shirt because when I was doing stand up in those years, I had no money. I even lived in my car for a little while
Wow.
until I got rained out in a parking lot. but but anyway, um, the funny thing is that because I had not much income, I only had one shirt for every show. So I
Right.
wore that shirt again and again and again. And it had BO stains, it had coffee stains, God knows what else it had on it. And when I did Facts of Life, when my first episode of Facts of Life, they wanted to duplicate that shirt. So they bought
Why?
me because it was such a great line and they wanted it in the
Oh, so they were
show.
just basically stealing your routine. They were just wanted to
Basically,
use it. Yeah.
to a point. But Wardrobe bought me in this new fresh t-shirt. And I started laughing hysterically. And she said, "What is so funny?" And I said, "I didn't know that's how you spell cerebral palsy." My original t-shirt has an E in palsy. And there's
Oh,
no
that's so funny.
and there's no
I guess it
E.
adds to the joke, right?
Yeah, and I said, "Oh my God, that T-shirt cost me 30 cents a letter. I could have saved 30 cents had I known how to spell."
Okay, so let's get to facts of life. So you're doing stand up, you're doing really well. I'm imagining that somebody saw you at the improv or the comedy store and said, "Hey, we'd like to put you on the show," but that's just a guess. What happened?
Fern Field was alerted to me because she had just done a documentary called, oh God, what was it called? It was called A Different Approach about people
Okay.
with disabilities that Norman Lear was involved in. And everybody kept telling her, "There's this new comedian. She has cerebral palsy. You gotta see her." And she was like, "Oh God, don't do that to me." No, she really is funny. And so her and her husband came to see me at the Comedy Store, and they had me perform for this second annual Media Access Awards in 1980. And Norman Lear and Charlotte Ray were both in my audience that night. And
Wow.
Norman came up to me after the show and he introduced himself and he said, "You know, you're really funny, kid, but you're way before your time." I said, "So? So wait a couple months." And he actually did. 2 months later, he cast me as Blair's cousin on The Facts of Life.
I'm just turning on my do not disturb. So when you were going to the comedy store, all right, Mitzi Shore is the lady that ran that place, and everyone who's ever been to the comedy store has some sort of interaction with her. Did you ever interact with her at the store, and how is your relationship with her?
It was interesting. Well, I'll be honest with you. Alex brought me up to LA. I mean, he didn't drive, he's blind, but
Alex, your blind friend. Okay.
he drove me up to LA, and we met with Danny Moore, who ran the original room for
Okay.
um, open mic nights on Monday nights. And he took one look at me and he said, "Oh shit." And he said, "A blind comic is one thing, but a CP comic?" And I'm going to do you a favor, Jerry. I don't want Mitzi Shaw to know that you're performing in her club. And I said, "Why?" "Well, because she might be against having someone with your disability on her stage, and any preconceived ideas I want to avoid. And I
Right.
don't want her to stop you before you are polished and good, because you're a new comic. You need to work at it. So what I want you to do is come here every Monday night at around 11:30, midnight. You don't have to stand in line with all the others. You come into the back door and you tell them to tell Danny that Jerry is here. And when Mitzi leaves the room, I will put you on stage."
Just so
And
everyone knows, Monday was their open mic night, meaning that if you waited in line, you could get on stage if there was enough time. So this
yeah,
is how he was smuggling you in.
yeah, I was guaranteed a time slot just as long as she left the room. And what was funny about that is that the first time I ever did it, I mean, I was terrified, if you can imagine, doing
Yeah.
stand up in front of an audience for the first time. And I knocked on the door, "Tell Danny that Jerry's here." And when the comic got off stage and Mitzi left the room, he ran up on the stage and said to the MC, "Announce Jerry from Orange County right now. Announce Jerry right now." So they rushed me on stage. And because my name was Jerry, everybody assumed that I was a male. You don't think
Oh, right, right.
immediately female, and the MC said, "And he drove all the way here from Orange County. Give him a big hand." I walked up on stage, and you could hear a pin drop. I mean, they were staring at me. I'm hearing impaired. I wear hearing aids. And I could even hear the whispers, "Oh my God, that's a he? And if he is a he, and if he is a he shouldn't be driving like that. He's really..." And I just did what Alex told me to do. I went into my first joke. The main thing that he told me to do was that I could tell cerebral palsy jokes as long as I could relate it to what is going on in the country, what is going on in the headlines. In other
Okay.
words, they're not going to be able to relate to you unless you bring them into something familiar that's in the news. Okay? So my first line out of my mouth was, "I don't know about you people, but I've heard an awful lot about the gays that have been coming out on it lately." And they were just shocked. They were quiet. They were staring at me. And I said, "Yeah, what you haven't heard about are all the terrible palsy people that have been coming out of the closet. But Don't tell anybody. This is our secret. I don't want Anita Bryant to know about it because then she'll go to all the schools across America and say, we must these cerebral palsy people from teaching in our public schools. They will influence our children. And before you know it, all our children will be moving like this.
Now that's hysterical. Did the audience like respond? Did they get it? Were they on board?
They would. I had them in the palm of my hand. I got a standing ovation the first night I ever performed.
Oh man. So okay, I've done improv, I've done comedy, I've done movies, TV, I've produced, I've written. I've never done stand up because it's the scariest thing in the world, not only because it's you alone with a mic, but I got to say other comics are really mean. Well, at least my experience. I have a lot of friends who are comics. I've been behind the stage at the Comedy Store, at the Improv. Everyone there is like a gunslinger trying to knock the other guy down. How did you find that group of people? I mean, were you included? Were you excluded? Were they? What was it like?
Of course, I had Alex and John as a big support, you know, but I also had Lotus Weinstock. I don't know if you remember her. She was a
I
comedian.
remember Lotus Weinstock. Yeah.
Okay, Lotus and I were very, very close. And she was really the only comedian at that time that embraced friendship with me. I didn't really know any of the comedians. And what people didn't understand either, because it's invisible, an invisible disability, is I have 75% hearing loss. So
Man.
I don't hear half of it. And when they did a review on my act for the calendar section of the LA Times, big, huge spread. And one of the things they wrote was, I can't believe this new, incredible, brave comedian, and she has so much self-confidence. It completely ignores her hecklers. So I have to do that.
It's your
So
superpower.
socially, I was, it was more disabling socially for me than just having cerebral palsy. It was people not knowing how to engage with me, how to talk to me. Just talk to me like a
Right.
regular person. To this
Yeah.
day, I strive for that, you know? And people keep me at bay sometimes because they don't, God, what do we say to her? You say what you would say to anybody else. It's just I
Yeah.
might not hear it, but I'll say it anyway.
Well, also, I mean, again, people who watch this show and listen to this show are kind of our age, so they kind of remember. But got to remember that at that time, people didn't either talk about it. It wasn't in the public knowledge, not public knowledge, but like as far as disabilities of any kind, people in a wheelchair were kind of looked at like weird. People who had anything that was different, it was not the way it is now, where it's more inclusive now. There's still things you got to deal with for sure, but back then you were like one of one. There was not really a deal going on. Did you tour at
I,
all?
was- I was the first person with a visible disability ever to be cast on a primetime series. It was
Right.
never done before me. And
So
I
I
was,
kind of went back and forth. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I went back and forth. Norm and Charlotte were at the show. They see
yes.
you on stage. He comes over. He says, "You've got a lot of talent, kid, but you're not ready." And you said, "Well, okay, give me a week." And how did that? What happened after that?
Well, I ran into him in the elevator later. I was I was with my then manager. Unfortunately, he was a horrible person. He ended up going to prison. But I said to my manager, I said, "Look, this is the man I met earlier. What's your name?" And Norman started laughing.
Yeah, Norman Lear at that time had like 5 shows.
And don't forget it, kid.
Yeah, he's the producer of All in the Family, The Jeffersons, Facts of Life, like Maude, like just every single show that was on television, Norman was
Yeah,
producing.
but you have to understand what people didn't understand is how hearing impaired I was. And I was good at faking it, I heard. I didn't really hear his name, and he wasn't wearing a sailor cap that night to identify him. So
Let me ask this question. I never thought this is interesting. You're hearing impaired, as you've said. You've got
Yes.
CP. Which one gives you more trouble?
Hearing impaired by far.
That's amazing. That's one's invisible. People don't know.
Yes, that gets me in more trouble because people assume that because I move this way, there's something intellectually wrong. Now, I will be brutally honest. I remember in the late 80s, a friend of mine called me and asked me to do a PSA for developmental disabilities. And I said, well, I'd love to, but I don't have a developmental disability.
Yeah.
And he said, yes, you do. And I said, no, you don't. He said, yes, you do. You have cerebral palsy. I said, that is not a developmental disability. And he said, why don't you call United Cerebral Palsy and find out? And the thing of it is, if you acquire cerebral palsy, head injury, before you're 18 years old, you can get this same effect from a car accident later at 18 and older, but they aren't going to call it cerebral palsy. They're going to call it brain injury. But
Okay.
but if you get the brain injury before you're 18 years old,
Or in utero.
yeah, it impedes your development. And what that means, it means that, I mean, right now I'm almost 69 years old. And developmentally, I'm probably 50. I've always, I've always been 10 years behind my actual age.
Yeah, well, I'm
Because-
developmentally about 17, so I don't know if it's CP.
Whatever. So, yeah, it is a developmental disability. There are things that, like, okay, socially, like I mentioned before, the combination of being hearing impaired and having CP and moving like this, people don't know how to treat me, what to think of
Yeah.
me. It's confusing. I remember saying to a teacher when I was about 12, maybe 11, I was crying and I said, I wish my mom and dad would buy me a wheelchair. And why in the world would you want a wheelchair when you worked so hard to learn how to walk? And I said, because if I were in a wheelchair, then kids would know that I'm physically disabled and there's nothing wrong intellectually with me. That's
Yeah.
my perception of it. You know, today I realize what a stupid reasoning that was. It wouldn't have made any difference. I still would have been ridiculed whether I was in a chair or not.
We'll be back after these messages. Have you ever thought about becoming an actor and making your friends and family jealous? Well, have I got a deal for you. Here at Working Actors School, we offer many different classes so you can become a famous actor like me. And we have a delightful selection of classes, including Adult Weekly. It's every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Here you will learn how to be an actor with other adults. How do we do it? How is it possible? Is it a miracle? Yes, it is. It's a miracle called Zoom. We teach everything online so you can become a famous actor and impress your friends and family. So if you want to be a famous actor and make your friends and family jealous, then you need to sign up at Working Actors School. You can get a hold of us at workingactorschool.com. You can sign up for classes at workingactorschool.com. You can make a reservation for the class online at workingactorschool.com. So come check us out. It's workingactorschool.com. Act 2, Success. Okay, so let's go to the acting part. So you've been doing your comedy, you're doing great. You end up meeting Norman Lear, even though you don't know. And then Norman Lear puts you or brings you on to Facts of Life. Is that okay? So, and just in curious, you've played Geri on Facts of Life. You've played Jewell on Deadwood. So you've played Geri Jewell, and they kind of name your characters Geri all the time. What's the deal with that?
I don't know. I'm at peace with it now. Because I remember when, now, of course, it was the affection for who I was as a comedian and a performer that they wanted me to be Cousin Geri.
Right.
There's no other Geri. Wow, Geri. Okay? Well, bump up to 2003, after I broke my neck, I thought that my career was over. I thought I'd never work again. And I had to go to this yuppie pharmacy in Santa Monica and pick up Botox to give to the doctor to inject it in my neck. And this particular day, I was in so much pain. I had no Botox in my system at all. The pain was through the roof. I couldn't even get dressed properly, so I stayed in my pajamas and wore a big jacket over it. I thought nobody's gonna recognize me at 8:30 in the morning. No big deal. And I'm standing in line, and this man turns around and he goes, "Oh my God, Geri Jewell." I said, I didn't even want to admit I was who I was because I looked like a total shit. And I said, "Yeah, it's me." And he said, "Well, I'm a huge fan of yours. I've watched you work over the years. I loved you. You've made me laugh. You've inspired me. But I haven't seen you on TV lately. What are you doing with your life now?" I said, "Botox." And he laughed. He goes, "No, I mean really." And I said, "I really am doing Botox." And he said, "Do you want a television series?" I said, "Wait a minute. This is not a casting office. This is a pharmacy. And you shouldn't play with someone's mind in a pharmacy of all places." And he said, "I'm not playing with your mind, and in case you don't recognize me, my name is David Milch."
Oh, are you kidding me?
I said, "The executive producer of NYPD Blue?" He said, "Yep." And I said, "Well, Mr. Milch, I'm flattered that you love my work and everything, but let's get real. I would make a real shitty cop." He said, "No, I just signed a contract last week with HBO. I'm doing a new Western called Deadwood. You want to do a Western?" And I looked up as far as my titanium neck would let me. And I said, "God, you have a real quirky sense of humor. I mean, I'm standing here with cerebral palsy, a titanium neck, dependent on Botox, and David Milch wants me to ride a horse. And he gave me his phone number on a prescription pad for an antidepressant and told me to call him.
Is there a more Hollywood story than that?
Yeah, I was the first person cast on Deadwood even before Ian McShane.
I have this, I mean, we're all over the place here, which is fine. I've got this weird question for you, okay? Because I had an opportunity to meet David Milch. My wife and I met with him for another project in his office. He's got a big back issue. He's got a lot of pain for his back or
God,
something.
yes.
And he was laying on the floor, rolling around, kind of like trying to stretch his back out.
I know.
And it's so funny because I was going to ask you if there's any connection between you and him because of dealing with that physicality. But literally, that's how you were cast. He was probably waiting in line for his meds for his back, right? I mean, I don't want to get personal about his medical condition, but did you have a connection because of that?
Of course, there was that connection. And, I haven't written everything yet. I will one day. But one of the things this man did, and he flew up to Santa Rosa, California, in a private plane with AC Lyles. Did you ever meet AC?
AC was the sweetest guy in the world. He was a producer of westerns over at Paramount, and then the best
Yes.
dressed guy in the world. Yeah, spats.
Okay.
He wore spats.
He and AC flew up to Santa Rosa to honor me, giving me a Lifetime Achievement Award, and they also gave money to the Independent Living Center up there for people with disabilities, and they also had a drawing, and the person's name that was drawn got to be a guest star on Deadwood. He did all that for me. I mean,
What a sweetheart.
he, one of these days I'll write the whole story, but he and I are definitely connected. And what's so bizarre is that we're both from Buffalo, New York.
Really?
Yes.
So okay, so we'll get to Facts of Life, but so Facts of Life, you start there as your acting career, okay?
Yes.
What was that experience like for you? It was the same time I was on NBC. I knew all the girls. I knew when you joined the show. We kind of met then at NBC events, and at that time, just to frame everything, Facts of Life was a really popular show. Your inclusion on it was like the first time, and you'll back this up, you've already said it was the first time anybody who had any physical disability kind of was on a show as an actor that wasn't about that physical disability. They dealt with it in the show, but it wasn't like you were guest starring as the girl with CP. It was like you were her cousin. So what was that whole situation? You were Blair's cousin. What was that situation all like?
Truthfully, I think that ideally it would have even been more powerful had I been cast as a student and embraced inclusion in the classroom. I was young enough. I was young enough to pass. I mean, I was 23, but I looked like I was 14,
17.
15. What did I tell you?
Yeah, you were just a kid, yeah.
I looked a lot younger than my real age. But they had just downsized the cast. Remember Molly Mallon was in the original one?
I remember all those girls, Julie Piekarski and
Yes.
Catherine Haddock, and all of them were, what was 16 Candles, too. Molly Ringwald was in, they had a
Yes.
huge cast, yeah.
Yes. And they just downsized it, and they just hired Nancy McKeon, so they couldn't bring another student when NBC was saying it's too large of a cast. So the next step was Norman's idea to have me play Blair's cousin, because I could bring out a human side to Blair that isn't revealed in any other way, but her love for her cousin.
I liked that because Blair was the perfect one that had no reality check, And I always thought that Cousin Geri was like a reality check for her, and like you're saying, a humanity check.
Exactly. Exactly. And a funny story that I don't know if we have time for it, but
We always have time for funny stories.
but in 1979, I got my SAG card even before Fact of Life. I worked 3 weeks on a Cheech and Chong film called Nice Dreams, and
You
I
work
had
at
a
Cheech and Chong. That's amazing.
yes, and I had a huge role in that movie. And there were really funny scenes, like I think Marion Cheech was in a padded cell, and Timothy Leary came in and gave him acid. And on his acid trip, he saw me at the Comedy Store.
They were famous for doing that. They had Paul Rubens in one of their movies
Yes,
early
he
on.
was in that
They,
movie
yeah.
also. Yes.
Okay.
And I got my SAG card. I worked 3 weeks. But here's the kicker. Um, the only way that Cheech and Chong could hire me was if I signed an agreement with the insurance company, because the insurance company felt that I was too much of a liability. We don't want her walking anywhere. She could trip. I mean, it's Cheech and Chong and they're worried about me.
That's hysterical. Classic insurance move.
Yeah, so I had to sign an additional contract that said I would not walk anywhere on set. In other words, if I had to go to the restroom, excuse me, I need a cart. I wasn't allowed to walk anywhere because they were afraid of me falling, okay? So one morning, my call was at like 4 a.m., and I was living in Hermosa Beach at the time, and we were filming on Sunset Boulevard. And I had done stand-up comedy the night before, so I was tired, but I knew I could make it. And I got to the parking lot in the lower lot at about 5 to 4, and I start trekking up the hill, and they said, no, no, Geri, you can't walk. Oh, come on, give me a break. I'm just going up the hill. No, we need an electric cart for Jewel. No cart came. Then I said, hey, I'm going to be late. I can't deal with this. Just let me go up. No, we'll get you a ride. So this truck comes around the corner. Hey, man, can you give Jewel a ride up to the set, man? Yeah, just put her on back of the truck and tell her not to move.
Like you're a prop.
So they put me on the back of the truck, and he put on that gas so fast that I had involuntary movement, and I let go, and I fell off the truck halfway up the hill.
God. Oh my
So-
God.
So they had to take me to the emergency room. And I had a cast halfway up my arm. And I came back at noon, and Tommy Chong sat in front of me, and I didn't even realize what was really going on. I had no idea that I was going to be cut from the film. But he sat down. I was still as happy as ever. And I said, Tommy, can you help me cut my meat? You only have one hand. And he said, Jesus, Geri, if they only allowed you to walk. This is your last day to work on this film, and they let me go because they couldn't match any of the prints with the master with a cast on my arm.
Right.
But it ended up being a blessing in disguise. Can you imagine? Because Nice Dreams came out right after I got on Facts of Life. Cousin Jerry is in a Cheech and Chong film.
Right. So what was your experience? I love that story. How did it when so you end up on Facts of Life? How did you end up working? Because I know all the girls. Kim and I have known each other since we were practically babies. How do you get along with everybody? Because it's a bunch of girls.
I got along well with all of them. Lisa Welchel and I are the closest. In fact, we reunited recently and we're close again. We were even roommates for a
Oh wow.
year. Right when I got on Facts of Life, she invited me out to dinner at her place. She was living in Studio City, and I drove in from Hermosa Beach. And at that time, I was driving a '69 Biscayne Chevy.
Nice.
I was lucky it even made it from Hermosa Beach. And she said, "Why don't you spend the night here? You don't have to drive all the way back there. I'm going out of town. I'll be back in 2 weeks. You can take care of my place." And when she came back, she said, "You know, I could argue here. Why don't we be roommates?" So we became very close friends and roommates. She treated me like everybody else to this
I
day.
like Lisa's a sweetheart. She's been. I had friends that were from Texas. She's from Texas, and they were really close. But it's just at that period of time, there. I talk about this all the time. Everyone knows it. That at the time there's only three networks. There wasn't 1,000 cable channels. There wasn't any internet. There wasn't anything. So if you were on TV, it was a huge deal. How was
Yes.
that experience for you to be, honestly, working, but kind of unknown to you can't hide. So what was it like to be that famous that quick?
I wouldn't advise anybody to be that famous that quick.
Yeah.
It's it's a lot overnight, and because I spent half of my life, over half of my life in special ed, that's another thing.
Why were you in special ed?
Because I came in at a time when you had a disability, you were automatically put into special ed. And once you got into that system, you couldn't get out, no matter what. It was like,
Wow.
God, can I go to regular school in my own neighborhood? Nope. Yes. And I was bused to school for years, and that also hindered my social skills because I was terrified of non-disabled kids. I avoided them at all costs. I mean, if I saw a
Because they were
group,
the other, they were different.
because they made fun of me and ridiculed me, harassed me. So I didn't have the, I thought, God, and I remember, where was I going with this?
We were talking about fame and how to deal with that out of
Yeah,
nowhere.
okay, so I was socially behind my age and emotionally behind my age, and I had all these wolves of sheepskin after me for my money, for my fame, for this, for that.
Yeah.
I didn't have, I needed guidance more than anything, and I didn't have it. I
Right.
remember when, and you know this, if you associate with people who are unsavvy, the industry puts you in a certain category. Oh, you're one of those. You know what I mean? They don't stop and think that you might. I mean, what's interesting is that, and I know you know this, you're a child star and you have a certain psychology that comes along with it that you have to deal with as you grow up. Well, I have the exact same psychology, but not because I was a child star, but because I was separated and bused to a different school every day. So
Right.
I
So
had
it's
that separation also. You know, you were
well.
different.
Also, this business is. I mean, look at this business will ostracize someone if they lose or gain 5 pounds. So
Oh,
for them to
yeah.
be able to have to understand how to deal with you, it's like with Stell Harmon, the acting coach. It's people just don't get it. Milch got it, and he cast you in a part that was a great part because it was more of a prostitute. Or were you a prostitute in that show? Or you were just worked at a whorehouse?
I, I think the way, well, the way I perceived it is I was probably sharing Swearingen's sister in the orphanage. Because why didn't he pick on me? Everybody else did, but he was protective of me. I think
Right.
that's where Mitch was going, and then they canceled it after the third season and it was supposed to go forward.
We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, I'm Patrick Labyorteaux, and I've been an actor since I was a little kid, so I know what it's like to be a little kid actor. So I have a class here called Youth Weekly, and that meets every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, and it is an awesome class if you are young and want to learn all about acting. We have a great set of kids, and it's taught on Zoom, so you can do it from anywhere. You can do it on your phone, you can do it on your laptop, on an iPad. It's awesome. I've had kids take a class while they were in the car coming back from soccer practice. I swear to you. So if acting is in your blood, come to workingactorschool.com and check out the Youth Weekly class every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. I'll see you there. Act 3, present day. Well, let's talk about Deadwood for a minute. Deadwood, I mean, in your career, besides working with the girls from Fax, which are great, and you did a 21 Jump Street, did you get to work with Johnny on that?
I didn't. He was working on Crybaby at that time.
Oh, so okay, so right when I did a 21 Jump Street, he had just gotten Crybaby and was going to go
Oh,
away.
that-
So
okay.
so I guess you worked on both sides of it. But so you've worked with Ian McShane, you worked with Tom Wilkerson, Molly Parker, all these great actors. You've got a chance as an actor to work with these great actors. What would you say you learned from working with some of these really fantastic talents?
Well, I've learned a lot about the skill. Um, you know, like you said, Tom Wilkinson, that was from Night of the White Pants.
Right.
And that was an interesting film. It was an indie film, and the executive producer wanted me to play her aunt. She had an aunt that had cerebral palsy. So bombarded me with videotapes of her aunt. So I didn't just up the notches of my own CP. I could creatively create how she had CP for that role.
Oh, that's cool.
And I had to do it in such a way because it was a comedy. I didn't want to offend her aunt or somebody with a more severe case of cerebral palsy and think I'm making fun of them. It was a fine
Yeah, but
line.
what was her name? Aunt Lolly. Aunt Lolly was kind of a kooky. She was kooky. Yeah, yeah.
And the thing of it is, truthfully, I could have added a lot more to that role. But the other executive producer, there were two, kept saying, no, she can't do that. That's not going to be accepted. She was more afraid of my disability than the other producer was. Oh, let her do. No, she can't do that. See, that's what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
Let me do it. I mean, there was a scene where I was absolutely bawling. Do you remember that scene where I was crying my eyes out
Yeah.
with Tom Wilkinson? I learned that skill from method acting, and I was reliving my mother's death to do that scene.
That's hard. That's really method acting is really hard. It's difficult. It's difficult emotionally, I should say.
Yeah, but it brought me to where I needed to be in that character at that moment. And in fact, the final movie of Deadwood, the Deadwood movie, and I'm so upset they cut the scene, but did you ever see the Deadwood movie from
No,
2000?
and along with The Wire, it's on my list of things that I have to watch that I've never watched is Deadwood. I pulled a few
Well,
episodes to watch for you, but I have not seen it, but it looks amazing.
I had to sing again, just like I had to sing on Facts of Life, T for two and two. And then on the Deadwood movie, they had me sing Waltzing Matilda. And I was singing it to Swearingen as he was going out of life. We didn't know whether he was going to live or die.
Uh huh.
And there was a part of that scene where tears came to my eyes and I kissed his forehead. And it was so moving. And how I did that scene was that I had lost my sister to cancer in 2017. So I was kissing my sister goodbye in that scene.
Oh
And
my gosh.
I was so bummed that they cut it because it was so genuine, it was so real. But they didn't
Yeah.
cut it because the acting was bad. They cut
No,
it
they
for
cut for 1,000 other reasons. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And that's
Well,
where I'm not given enough credit as an actress. They don't let me go to where I can go. You
right.
know, they hold me back.
Well,
Let
if it's
me
any
do
consolation, I think
it.
all actors feel that way. I
Yeah,
think,
that's
but I hear, but I hear the frustration is that look, you're not going to get to audition for all the parts. I can't audition for all the parts, but the amount of parts that they let you audition for is got to be much smaller, obviously, because there,
of
it's like,
course it
I mean, it's just that part of it really, really sucks. So, okay, so I just want a quick question. I saw in the credits that there's a woman by the name of Elizabeth Sarnoff. She wrote for Deadwood, and she also created and wrote for Alcatraz. Is that a
is.
connection that, like your relationship? Is that how you were ended up over on
Oh yeah,
Alcatraz?
that was definitely a result of being on Deadwood. She considered me for Alcatraz.
Yeah.
And don't worry, it had nothing to do with Florida. But uh, yeah, it was supposed to be another reoccurring role, but it only lasted one season, so I never got
Yeah,
it.
that was. I remember that show being interesting, and then there was a lot of Lost shows, like after Lost came out, where they did these mystery shows that they would big fanfare to launch them, and then they just kind of went away mysteriously. Okay, so you've done all this acting, you've been on stage, you're doing all these great things, but then you end up you writing a book. I'm walking as straight as I can, transcending disability in Hollywood and beyond, which is awesome. I have not read it. You want to tell people about it and where they can get it?
Well, that's not my newest book. That was
What's your newest book?
my newest book is Jerry's Jewels and Gems.
Oh, cool. What's this about?
This and Norman Lear wrote the foreword for it at 100 years old.
God, that guy just keeps going.
I know, and I'm very proud of this book, but it's a different industry. It's hard to push. But my other book was my autobiography. This isn't really autobiographical. This is a collection of articles that I wrote for Ability Magazine for several years. And I thought, you know what? This is what's needed today and what the world is going through now. And I asked the editor, Chet Cooper, if I could do a hardcover coffee table book with all my articles. Is that okay? And he signed it away. He said, yeah, go ahead, be my
Nice.
guest. And So I have this book, but it's really hard to promote. But
Well,
it's
you're
a,
doing it right now, so give your hard pitch. What will people get if they get this book? It will solve the world's problems because your words are so magical.
there's, you know, I, I can tell you that when I gave it to Lisa Welchel to read, I thought she read it, and I never mentioned it again. I never asked her to write a review or anything. And then about 4 weeks later, she texted me. She said, "Oh my God, I only read the parts that you wrote about me."
It's an actress, that's why.
And then I took the time to read the rest of the book. Oh my God, Julie, it is such an incredible book. And she wrote a review on Amazon for me. She said, "I look at
Fantastic.
that book all the time, and it's a reminder of what we all have to do to survive as human beings." And that's what this book is a collection of.
Well, there you go. So go buy the book. Show it one more time because I want everyone to see it. Geri's Jewels.
Julie.
Geri
Well,
Jewell and Gems. Geri's Jewels and Gems. Awesome.
yeah,
Okay.
the editor wanted to call it Geri's Jewels, and I said no. I said that sounds like a sex book. No. And I said, but I will call it Geri's Jewels and Gems. That's better. So that's what
There you
I
go. And it also perfect way to incorporate it. We'll be back after these messages. Hey, I'm Patrick Labyorteaux and I play an actor on TV, and I've been doing this for a long time. And I know what it's like if you are in a class with people and sometimes you just want to have that one-on-one connection with the person that you're working with to go over, I don't know, a particular scene, or maybe you have an audition, or maybe you just want the privacy to try stuff that you don't really know is going to work and not have anyone look at you. Well, I have the perfect solution for you. It's called One-on-One with Patrick Labyorteaux. You can book your time at workingactorsschool.com, and it's just me and you for an hour going over whatever it is you want to work on, breaking down the script, talking about character, figuring out your intention, the spine of the scene, everything that goes in to making a dynamite performance. So if you're interested in acting and want that one-on-one personal attention, check out One-on-One with Patrick Labyorteaux. You can find all the information you need at workingactorsschool.com. Act 4, questions. Okay, so now we're into the questions. I'm going to ask you these questions. I ask everybody, all of my guests, these questions. This first one, these questions come from my wife. It's called Tina's Gotta Know. And the first question is called That's SheauxBiz. And that is, what is the most Hollywood moment in your life?
definitely meeting Liza Minnelli.
How did that happen? What was that experience?
Well, in 1984, I had another book out called Geri. It was supposedly my autobiography, but I hated the book with a passion, and my manager had gotten me into that contract, so there was no getting out. And I was in New York City promoting my horrible autobiography.
When you say autobiography, it sounds like you wrote it, but you worked with somebody else that
Yeah, it was
you didn't get along with?
With a
Okay.
ghostwriter.
Yeah.
And remember, I was 25, so I was probably 16. And my attitude was that if you're not going to let me write my own book, then I'm not even going to read it.
Sounds about right.
I basically didn't, and I went on a huge book tour, and I had just done all the morning shows, Good Morning New York, Good Morning America, all of those, and everybody was hungry. Okay, we're gonna go eat. No, we have to go shopping. Geri, you're on a book tour. But you have to understand, Patrick, I hated my book. I, oh, so what? I want to go shopping. Well, you go shopping anytime. You have shows to do later on. We need to eat. I want to, and I don't know why I was being so prima donna-ish, I guess. And so we went to the theater district so I could go shopping. Everybody was pissed at me. The publisher, my brother was with me. I took him. He couldn't believe I was acting the way I was acting. And now I had to buy something because everybody was so pissed. So, so I bought something and we went over to NBC to do the next show. And the executive producer of Live at 5 was even pissed at me because I was late and they didn't have time to do hair and makeup touch-ups, so they just threw me on the air. And my attitude was, I don't care, I don't like my book anyway. And so I got off stage and everybody that's with me is hungry. And a PA came over to me and said, Miss Jewell, we know you're very, very busy, but there's a fan of yours that really wants to meet you. Can you spare a few minutes? And everybody was like daring me, like, don't you dare say yes. Oh, sure, no problem. And I walked in the room and it was Liza Minnelli. And
Wow.
and Liza looked at me and she said, oh my God, I can't believe I'm meeting you. I have followed your career since day one. And wow, I've always wanted to meet you. And I said, Liza, I said, I don't really ask celebrities to do this very often. In fact, hardly at all. But can you sign something for me? And what I bought that afternoon, I had under my arm. I pulled it out, and it was Judy Garland at Carnegie Hall.
Are you kidding me?
Nope. And Liza was shocked. She turned white. She said, how did you know that I was going to be here? And I said, I didn't. I just went and my publicist kicked me in the ankle. Oh, I. And she said, this is the only poster that I don't have of Mama's. And you're standing there with it.
Oh my God.
And I've never said this publicly, but I've mentioned a lot of that, about it in the book. I'm walking as straight as I can. But when she asked me for my phone number, because she said, I really want to be friends, and I want to watch movies and have popcorn and be a friend. She was really reaching out to me. Do you have a phone number? And I said, no, I don't have a phone. And my brother looked at me like, what the hell are you doing? And then she said, oh, okay. Do you have an address? Do you have a physical address where I can reach you? And I said, no, I don't live anywhere.
What are you
And
doing?
I didn't realize it at the time, but in hindsight, nobody had at that point of that caliber had given me any kind of attention like that, like wanting to be my friend. And so I was terrified of it. I thought,
Oh.
so I stopped the process, and I had many, many situations where I ran into her, and I still, to this day, on my bucket list. I would love to have the opportunity at some point to apologize to her for being such an immature.
You know, the surprising thing is she probably would get it more than anybody else.
Yeah,
Because I can't imagine that people, that a person like Liza specifically, that everybody who she's probably very well aware of people wanting to be your friend for an ulterior motive, and you saw that she wanted it for real and were freaked out by it. I bet she would understand.
Terrified. And I have regretted it so deeply over the years, and I've never had the opportunity to really suitably apologize to her for that. You know.
Wow.
But it
Well, the
was
second
most
question
amazing.
is that showbiz part two. What's your most embarrassing Hollywood moment? But I don't know. Maybe that's it. That sounds kind of like a combo.
No, it wasn't even embarrassing. It was just traumatic. I
Yeah.
went to my room and cried myself to sleep. I couldn't understand why I did that. And I don't think that was the most embarrassing moment. I've had so many.
Okay. Well, that's showbiz part two? What is your most embarrassing Hollywood moment?
I was doing a show to a full house up in Oregon, like about 500, 600 people, and I left it open for about 15 minutes for question and answers at the end. And someone asked me how I got up when I got down. And I thought, what an odd question. And I took it literally. And I said, well, let me show you. And I laid down on the stage. Well, first I moved this leg. And everybody was yelling, Jerry, she meant emotional. And I was so embarrassed and laughing so hard that I peed my pants on top of everything. So yeah, that was embarrassing.
Okay, that works. Okay, this is a showdown. What is the best performance you've ever done and the worst performance you've ever done? Like a combo, like show them down. Like what's your best and what's your worst?
My best was Deadwood, when I was walking through the mud and fell down and had to get up again and had to maintain my dignity and pride when nobody would help me. That was interesting because I I did that scene about, God, 12, 13 times, and they kept saying, okay, we got to take it from the top. I thought, what am I doing wrong? I don't get it. I thought I was doing it fine. And then the last take, David Milch had another actor run in front of me and imitate me. Go.
That's the take they use
He
too.
wasn't getting the response that he wanted from me. And when that happened, I didn't expect it. I was in shock, and it was like, oh my God, this is what kids used to do to me when I was little. And what I didn't realize, that I had blinders on my eyes to keep myself going. I don't see half of it because I don't want to see it. And then
Yeah.
it was put in front of me, and they got the emotion, and it was powerful when I saw the scene. I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
That is a powerful scene. I have that's one of the scenes that I was able to watch, and it's really affecting. It affects you when you watch it because it's like you're with your character, and like the town just is grinding you down. What would be the worst performance that you've ever done?
The worst performance. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, you do. Now you know. You're thinking of something.
I was thinking of 21 Jump Street, and there
Okay.
was a, yeah, there was a line where I said something, and it was as if Beaver Cleaver said it, and not my character. Every time I watch it, I see Jerry Mathers. Oh, you did that so well. And Jerry Mathers is a good friend of mine, and I have always adored him, so it wouldn't surprise me that, that I would pick a Jerry Mathers and be fun.
Okay, the next question is no show. What part did you want but you never but you didn't get? What we all go up for auditions that we really want. Which one for you was the one that got away?
There was one that I really wanted, and it was the Secret Garden, where that homely girl was in the cabin, and Robert Young played someone who was disfigured. She didn't see it because she saw him for who he was, and I really wanted to do a remake of that film and play that girl. But now I'm too old.
Well, hey, we're all too old for a lot of things. Okay, favorite show. What movie has most influenced you? Would it be that movie, or would it be a different movie?
Run that question by me again.
Sure. What movie has influenced you the most?
Oh, you're gonna laugh. I went to see Forrest Gump with my husband at that time. And we walked out of the film, and I was just so upset. And he said, "What is your problem?" And I said, "Well, they didn't let us know what Forrest is doing with his life now." And Richard said, "Jerry, he's a fictional character." I was actually feeling guilty because I didn't accomplish as much as Forrest all through the film. I was like, God, I wish I had thought of that. God,
I don't think anybody.
And everything. Wow.
I think that was the whole point. He accomplished more than anybody ever could.
And, you know, we have another connection, and that's Michael Landon. And
Oh, cool. What's your connection with Michael?
Michael wanted me to do an episode of Highway to Heaven.
Uh-huh.
And unfortunately, it was too complex and didn't get done, but in the process, he also became aware of a young woman named Kathy Buckley. Do you know who Kathy Buckley is?
I don't.
And you should have her on your show.
Okay.
She is the first publicly hearing impaired comic that there was, and she won so many awards for best female comedians in the late 80s and early 90s. She's mega talented. She's still performing all over the country. And she met Michael Landon first. And she said, "You know, I really want to get into show business. What do you think I should do?" And Michael said, "You need to meet Geri Jewell." And we became fast friends. And she became a comedian, a stand-up comic because of me. That wasn't her goal. Just like when I met Alex, that wasn't my goal to be a stand-up comic, and it wasn't Kathy's goal to be a stand-up comic. She wanted to be an actress. But I got her into stand-up. And
So
that
it's a
was
full
my
circle
thing.
moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what a great way to complete our conversation, Geri. I'm so glad we got reconnected. It's been way too long. Your career is awesome. Congratulations. And I'm really, really thrilled. You do all these great motivational speakings, and you've got your book out. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Patrick.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux, Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Hey, everybody. I'm so glad that you're enjoying the podcast and checking it out. It is an audio podcast wherever you get your audio podcast, and it's a video podcast over on YouTube. My socials are all patrick.labyorteaux, and that is on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok. I'm everywhere. If you want information on the school, you can go to workingactorsschool.com. We have classes going all the time. It's a lot of fun. I suggest you check it out. Hey, we'll see you next time.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux, Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.